Hey, good morning, everybody. This is part 2 of Jean's Block Party 2019 block number 38, which hopefully you will have seen me make the pattern and choose the fabrics. So now this is the second part, how we're actually going to construct this paper pieced, foundation pieced block here, block number 38. If you haven't seen part 1, refer back to that. You'll get the pattern, cutting instructions to make this. There's 11 pieces in this block that we're putting in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in a sewing on paper, but it magically appears. So this is part 2 of our block number 38. Here is what I have told you guys to get for a foundation piece block. You need a few tools, and hopefully you'll have gotten them. I told you this weeks and weeks ago. We have our pattern, which I've sharpied. I have a fairly large piece of card. It doesn't have to be that. It could be only half that size. A piece of card, and then I have my sharp rotary cutter, and I have my seam roller. And that's because I don't get up and down and go to the ironing board. I just use my seam roller. And then you should have these. You don't really need them, but very helpful. This is add a quarter ruler, which has a little lip here. It makes it much easier for foundation piecing. Now, what we're going to do with this funky pattern here is we are going to have the pattern looking towards us, okay, with the Sharpie. We're going to pick up our number 1 fabric, okay? Mine's directional. What we're going to be doing is I'm putting this the way it's going to be. My direction's coming this way. I'm looking at it this way. What we're doing is I'm turning this over. This is the wrong side of the fabric. And I'm putting my pattern the right side up. So I have the wrong side of my fabric to the wrong side of my pattern at this point. Now I've cut this so generously, look at that, so wonderfully generously, that I know that this piece of fabric here is going to cover my number 1 area here. Look at that, sticking out. That's great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep that nice and straight because mine has to be on this fairly straight. That's fine. What I'm going to do is, as you can see, I have this little rotating mat. I had an old cutting mat and a Lazy Susan from the Goodwill. I just super glued, cut out this mat and super glued it. And as you can see, a rotating mat does wonderful. But again, if you just have everything right here next to you on a small cutting board, that's awesome. This is how I have mine. So I have this here. Now, a lot of people put a dab of glue. A lot of people put a dab of glue right there. I'm just going to do a pin because it's a larger piece anyway, okay? And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my, I'll take this one. I'll take my, I'm going to take my card, excuse me. I'm going to take my piece of card and I'm going to put it on the line between 1 and 2, okay? I'm going to put that on the card between 1 and 2 and I'm going to fold over my pattern piece. And I have this extra here, right? I have this extra fabric. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, add a ruler. In this instance, I'm taking my longer one. And I'm going to just butt that up to that card. You see that? And I'm assured that this is 1/4 of an inch. I'm adding a quarter. And I'm trimming off this piece of fabric. Okay, I'm just trimming that piece of fabric off, which extends beyond. Now I'm holding everything nice and tightly. I'm taking this away. It's already pinned on, and I'm turning it over. Now, with my second piece, which is going to be covering this triangle, number 2. I have a large piece covering number 2. I've cut it in, fairly straight. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put the pretty side to the pretty side, right sides together, on that line that we've just cut. We're going to trim it up. So if this is a little bit ragged, that's fine. But I've cut it fairly straight. Now I can see that this piece of fabric, when it's topped up, when it's turned over, here's my triangle. This is the piece. This is the right side of this is what we're going to be seeing. This is at the end block. So I can see when I flip this over, that triangle is going to be well covered. Well covered. Well covered. I'm extending beyond the seam here. Now I'm going to hold that like that. Flip that over. And I'm holding between 1 and 2 on that line, right? Now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, holding the paper, holding the piece under there. I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to put my needle down right on the line between 1 and 2, the beginning of that triangle. Okay, I have set my, hopefully this is in the frame. I have set my machine at a finer stitch, and I've used a microtex needle. You might not want to do that, but it pierces the fabric. It pierces because we're sewing on paper. And don't worry about it's not going to dull after 2 seconds of sewing on our paper. So I put my needle right down on that line. Now instead of back stitching, a lot of people, you can back stitch if you want, but I go right on the line and I just hold my fabric and my material just slightly, and it sort of locks that stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch right on that line, right to where it meets with number 5, right on that line, on the paper. And when I come to 5, I sort of hold my machine, lock that stitch, and right to the line. Now a lot of people go over the line, but then you have to sort of take out those stitches, so I don't do that. I'm going to trim that up. Get rid of get rid of these seams here, these little flickies things. And here's my piece, okay? So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip up my pattern piece, and I'm just going to trim that line again. And there I have a perfect 1/4 inch on both pieces, and this is where our roller comes into play. I'm just going to roll that. Just going to roll that little seam there. Okay? Now I'm going to find line 3 between line 1 and 2, and there you go. There's 1 and 2, and I'm going to go down to line 3. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to get my card. Now a lot of people, again, they crease beforehand they crease every single piece of paper. I don't do that. I do it as I go along. Whoops. And I'm going to use my adder ruler, and I'm going to trim off this piece here. I'll remove my card. I'm going to get my other piece of fabric. I'm going to make sure, put that there. In general, I'm going to make sure pretty sides to pretty side that when I flip this up, it's going to cover that triangle. And sure enough, I'm holding it between line 3, and I'm going to stitch on that line, starting it right on that line. Hold my machine and stitch. And I'm going to go right down to the line, right on the line, shortening my stitch. Now, I'm going to flip this up with my roller. It's basically finger pressing, but doing it like this. And there. Now we're going to go to see, we're going to go right around the clock here, as it were. I'm going to go to, I've done 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to go to number 4. And I'm going to bring up my card. I'm going to bring up my paper. And because we have lots of excess, this is wonderful. I'm just going to trim off, oops, put my 1/4 inch, you see that? Put my 1/4 inch ruler, always remember. I'm going to trim that right off like that. And now I'm going to find number 4, which, if you remember, are my long strips. Again, I erred on the side of caution. I have these strips. Now I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to see that this strip here, this my nice wide strip, covers from here to here, out into the off of the pattern piece. So I can be assured that this strip here will cover my number 4. So again, I've cut it fairly straight. I take it, I pinch it, I hold where it's going to begin and end, here, here, and here. Make sure it's all lovely and straight. I take it over to my machine. Now I'm going to start a little bit outside the 1/4 inch. Just holding that a little bit. A nice sturdy stitch. I'm going to stitch on between number 3 and number 4. On that line. I'm just going to go, this one I am going to go sort of into the seam allowance, just holding it. Because we are going to trim this block down to 9.5 inches. So here's number 4. Take my seam roller. I can take now this pin out. Now I'm going to turn it around. It's all funky. You're thinking, what? It's okay. I'm going to come to number 5. Take another piece. I'm assured that that's going to cover number 5. I'm going to turn this around. Right sides together. I'm going to make sure that that covers number 5. And it does. Now what I'm going to do when I see number 5, I'm going to take my card, put it on number 5, bring my paper around, crease it down, take my outer ruler, and I have all of this stuff here. I can get rid of all of this stuff. It's okay, I have lots left over. I want lots left over. Remove my card, take my piece, flip it around, make sure that you can see, because we've sharpied it, make sure that this piece, number 5, covers your number 5. Hold it end to end, put it in your machine, starting sort of in the seam allowance, a little, hold it tightly. And stitch along number 5. And sort of right off. Number 5. And then, again, to trim it up nicely, we're going to go here. It's just that little bit there of the fabric. I'm going to trim that right up. And so you have a nice 1/4 inch seam. And then you press this up and press it, roll it like that. So our block is coming together, isn't it? Beautifully, with 1/4 inch seams. But look how lovely. Now we turn it around. We're going to find block section number 6. Put your card, crease your fabric, trim, put your add a 1/4, trim off that rubbish, remove your card, flip it over, have your piece you know that's going to cover, put it fairly on the straight grain. You have your, we're sewing between these 2 points here, flip it over. We're sewing on the paper at all times. Hold it. We're sewing on the paper at all times. So it is a funky method. It's sort of back to front, front to back, mirror image, backwards, but it's not hard, as you can see. As you can see, this is not hard. So what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm going to get my card. I'm just going to trim that up. Just going to trim up this bit here. Nice 1/4 inch all the way around. Just a little bit. Straighten it up. Put that like that. Make sure you have your seam roller, and look at that lovely beautiful point that we've made. Beautiful, beautiful point. Now we're going to come down to piece number 7. So it's basically card, crease, measure, cut, stitch. You're going to do the same exact thing. Getting rid of all this stuff, but that's fine. Put it over, remove your card, flip it over, find your next piece, make sure it covers it. And as you can see, and I've pretty much cut that straight, you might want to trim it, and then you're going to hold it, take it over to our machine. We're stitching on the paper. Hold your machine tightly. Sometimes it's not even necessary to trim up, but sometimes it is. Just that, because we've already trimmed our one piece. It's just a little shred there. There we go. Turn it over. Look how our block is coming along. Look at that. Look how beautiful. Look how beautiful. This is in the middle, my number 1. Now I have my 4 corners, right? So I turn it over. Make sure everything's tucked out. Now what do I want? Oh, there's my number 8. Here's my number 8. So I'm going to get my card, put my card on my number 8, crease my fabric, use my add a 1/4, trim this off, remove my card, flip it over, take my corner piece, making sure when I sew it on that line and I flip it that my whole pattern is covered. So I know that's covered. I hold it here and here. I come over to my machine, go on the line, again, you might want to just trim this up a little bit. It's usually pretty good, even if you've just cut that piece a little random. Trim that up if you want. Remove your card, remove your paper, turn it over. There is our corner piece. Look how beautiful. Again, leave that hanging out. Come to number 9. Card, crease, add a 1/4, trim, remove, flip over, piece of fabric. Maybe just straighten that up. Check. Make sure it covers your corner the whole way. Hold it, flip it, stitch from line to line. Flip it over. Let me see. Come back. I'll just trim that up again. Remove it, turn it over. Seam roller it. Turn it over. I got number 10. As you can see, this rotating mat really works beautifully. So card, flip, ruler, trim, remove, turn over, place, check, hold, machine on the paper, so it gets rather monotonous, really. You can see that, and I always just check, crease, just trim that up a little bit. So it's all, everything is a lovely 1/4 inch. People will say, oh, how'd you do that? And then flip it over, up, press. And then our final, which is number 11, card. Make sure everything's out. Card, crease, add a 1/4, trim, remove, turn over, find your fabric, check, hold it where it's going to be sewn. Take it to your machine. And I'll turn it over. I'll replace this. I'll just check. There's a little bit of extra excess. Just trim that up. And then turn this over, and that is our final pressing. Now our block is done. I'm going to go over and I'm going to show you how we trim up our block. Now here is my block. I just realized my block's going to be, this is going to be on the diagonal because I put it on, unless it was put on point, which is fine because my blocks, the blocks are on the square. But that's okay. It's very interesting that way. That's fine. So if you're using a directional print, it's not going to work. But this is really pretty because it's, as long as it's like that. So that's how our block, as it comes off of the sewing machine, right? Now we're going to turn it around. We're going to put it in front of us. And you really don't even, oh, excuse me, you really don't even need, well, you do, you need your square. But our 9.5 inch square, which we're going to trim it down, is the black lines around the edges, okay? So you just put your 9.5 inch square, and you're going to be cutting, be brave, you're going to be cutting on those edges right there. You're going to be cutting on that line. Going to be cutting away this excess right through, so you know that you're going to have a 9.5 inch square here, because obviously you've made your pattern exact. Yeah, my directional fabric it didn't really work, but it's okay, it's fine. And then right through. So we cut off all this rubbish, and you do have extra fabric, you do, but there. Oh no, there it is. It worked out pretty. Oh yeah, it did work out pretty. Of course it did. The way I sewed it, yeah. Oh, look at that. So ta-da, ta-da. So we have here, we have not quite a 1/4 inch seam. I'll be cutting off that's a little bit. There's a 1/4 inch. There's a little bit cut off. That's fine. But we have, and because it's cut off anyway, I'm not bothered about that. That point there and that point there. That's absolutely beautiful. I love my block, paper pieced. It's interesting. 4 different fabrics. And with mine, I got all confused. It is confusing. Did you see that? I got confused. But like this is because it's going here. It's going straight across. I thought, the way I had done it, it looked like it was on point, but it's not. Of course it's not. Because I had thought of that in the beginning, but I got confused here. So there you go. Now, the last thing we have to do is very carefully just remove the paper. Very, very carefully. And as you can see, you see that? It comes off. If you've used a nice sharp needle, it comes off very nicely. We've creased it and we've sewn it, so the stitches. So I'm just going to continue. Look at that. I'm just going to continue. Be very careful not to stretch these corners. Be very careful. You might want to starch your block, so you're being careful not to distort it. But it is a perfect 9.5-inch square, ready to go into our block party block, our block party quilt. So I'm just going to finish taking these off. As you can see, easy peasy. Being careful not to stretch. And there is our foundation piece block. So what do you think, folks? Do you enjoy it? Have you enjoyed that? It's not hard. It's tedious. It just goes around and around. So whatever your pattern is, you just follow, whether it's A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. You just go around. You're sewing. You're putting it on the back of the paper. You're sewing on the front of the paper, and then you're trimming. And then look at that. You can see. Let me see if I can get this. Look at our beautiful. Look at our beautiful 1/4-inch. Oh, the tape is there, so I have to cut that. But look at our beautiful 1/4-inch seams. Beautiful 1/4-inch seams. So I'll just remove, being very careful to remove all the paper to reveal the beautiful back of our foundation paper pieced block. So I hope you've enjoyed this. People who didn't want to do it, why don't you have a go? It's easy. But look, as you can see, my beautiful seams. So I'll just cut that. Be very, very careful when you're cutting your tape across, obviously. But there's our block, folks. Our foundation paper piece block. I'm going to go starch it. And yeah, love it. All right, thanks. See you next week. Bye.